I was scrolling on Facebook the other day because that's what people my age do for fun nowadays, and I came across this thing from the Purina Institute, and it was a sponsored post, and it led me into a rabbit hole that I think you are going to enjoy. Now, it is really interesting what they say on the ad and how it is worded, and any further reading I did afterwards. They did say, if you are considering feeding homemade or commercial raw diets, we recommend that you first consult with a specialist in veterinary nutrition for guidance. While your pet may enjoy eating raw pet food, and it may have some benefits, there are several health considerations for your pet and your family that you should really know about. Now, this taps into various different issues, and I am going to explain them as we go along. The first one is the absolute skyrocketing rise of homemade pet foods and raw diets. And here in the UK, it is estimated that about 10% of dogs are raw fed these days. And this is one of the biggest kibble companies in the world warning us about the dangers or the potential dangers of raw feeding and homemade diets. It is also a very interesting trend from many people who have been burned over the years with kibble, and they have started buying and prepping their own dog food at home, or their own cat food at home for that matter. So the first two things they do acknowledge implicitly is the rise in market share of raw foods and DIY dog food, and they warn us against them. The second point they make is that you should consult with a vet professional if you wish to switch to a raw food diet or a DIY dog food. Now, Purina doesn't own vet practices directly, but they do have a stake in a European veterinary group, which is IVC. And IVC is one of the 6 companies that own 60% of UK vets. And I am very sure that they have stakes in other veterinary practices across the world. So, coincidentally, it does resonate with me that what they are trying to say is that you should consult with a veterinary professional that is likely to be in cahoots or controlled or owned partially by us to tell you what's best for your dog. And if you don't see the correlation there, well, I don't think I can help you, and I don't think I'm going to change your opinion. But if I tell you to consult a professional, and I am in control of that professional, and I have a stake in that professional and what they do and what they sell, do you not think there's a conflict of interest there? I mean, Purina themselves on their website acknowledge that the interest in raw diets for dogs has been on the rise in recent years. Are these diets actually healthier for our dogs, or do the risk outweigh the benefits? It's absolutely staggering the amount of information they write on raw food for and against, and the ratios of for and against. What they say is that raw feeding dogs is often a cause of concern to vets, as there's little research done of the safety and benefits, and many believe that the risks greatly outweigh the positives. Now, we do have to acknowledge that a lot of the research paid for by kibble companies, by the big 3 mainly, are the very literature that vets actually read on the topic. And so if I am paying for research to be published, do I want that research to express the same opinion as I have? Hell yes. So that's one thing you need to be aware of. Also, they say that some people believe that raw feeding is associated with a shinier coat, healthier skin, cleaner teeth, improved energy levels, and better digestive health. But as yet, there isn't any robust evidence for these benefits. The only studies they cite here, and this is really interesting, they say that some small studies have suggested that stool quality is subjectively better on raw diets. So the only benefit they see subjectively, so not objectively, is that your dog's stools might be better. Now, they do enumerate the different potential risks of raw feeding. They say that raw meat contains pathogens such as bacteria and parasites, which can be a threat to both human and canine health. This is a point of contention also shared by vegan vets and people advocating for vegan pet food. And they say that, well, the risk of salmonella, the risk of any other bacteria or pathogens in pregnant women or babies or ourselves and us handling raw meat in front of them poses a very high health risk. And my counterpoint has always been to people that I am talking to responsible raw feeders. I'm not talking to people who just want to manipulate raw meat with a lot of disregard for their safety. So I am talking to people who want to do this properly, who want to do this correctly, and who actually want to do this the right way. I'm not talking to people who want to smear raw pet food in their faces. That's not really the public I'm talking to. The second point they make against raw diets is that these diets aren't properly formulated or balanced, meaning they can lead to health problems if fed for an extended period. Also, home-prepared diets are very difficult to get right in terms of nutritional balance without the help of a qualified pet nutritionist. And few commercial raw diets have been evaluated in feeding trials. I mean, this is something that I have actually criticized the raw pet food community for. I mean, here in the UK at least, we have raw pet foods with 50% vegetables. We have raw pet foods with rice, which is something we don't like in pet food. There is some raw feeding companies that put 15% bone, others put 10% bone. Some have 15% vegetables, some have no vegetables, yet all these brands seem to be complete and balanced. So irrespective of which brand of raw dog food you buy these days, they are all complete and balanced. And this is another pet peeve of mine. So I do have to acknowledge that sometimes all these raw food companies haven't really got a grip on, or they can't seem to agree on what's best for our dogs. They don't seem to be doing something slightly different, yet putting this is complete and balanced and this is the best thing for your dog. So is it the best thing for your dog, or is it the best for you and your bottom line? I don't really understand. The second point Purina make here that I do have to agree with is that, and we see this all the time in our shops, people come in and they DIY their food, they cook their food or whatever they might be, and they get the ratios incorrectly. They do not feed any bone, they don't feed any offal, they don't feed any liver, they have no idea what they are doing. They feed single proteins, they feed maybe grains, they feed their dogs bread, whatever. And there is, in my opinion, a ratio that you should adhere with if you are cooking or if you are making your own dog food, and that should be the 80-10-10. And that is the belief that if your dog ate a small mammal in the wild, they would eat roughly 80-10-10. 80% should be the meat, 10% should be the bone, and 10% should be offal, of which 5% is liver. And maybe the fermented vegetables within the mammal, they would be eaten as well, and those might release some polyphenols, which is the goodies in the vegetables. But for example, a lot of people feed their dogs a lot of raw vegetables, and dogs can't really digest raw veggies. So there are so many things people do incorrectly when it comes to homemade dog food. Now, we came up with an easy DIY recipe book, and it's packed with recipes that you can make for your dog, and these will be a lot better than anything you are already doing. They are simple to make, and you can buy everything in bulk from the supermarket typically, and you can get it in the link below, and it's actually really good. So if you are interested in making your own dog food at home, well, this is a great start. They also say that raw diets often contain bones, which can cause choking, broken teeth, and damage or obstruction digestive tract. This is something I really don't agree with, because if you are a responsible raw feeder and you are starting your puppy on raw food, you aren't going to give your dog something they cannot manage. So yes, whilst sometimes if your dog is not accustomed to eating a bone, some people might just give them a knuckle bone or something really that they shouldn't be eating. Yes, I do acknowledge that. Most people have zero problems feeding bones to their dogs. And the last point they make is that these diets are often expensive when compared to other dog foods, despite often being lower if nutritional quality, according to Purina, obviously. And to the question, can dogs actually eat raw meat? In theory, they say yes, they can eat it, but the question is more about whether they should. Dogs can digest meat in most forms, but there are a large number of risks that come with a raw diet. For these reasons, we recommend that you do not feed your dog raw meat. So raw meat is not good according to Purina, but what's really good according to Purina is sugar in pet food. What's really good for your dog is rice, it's whole grain wheat, poultry byproduct meal, soybean meal, it's corn gluten meal is fantastic for your dog according to Purina. Whole grain corn is great for your dog by Purina. What's really good for your cat according to Purina, your cat being an obligate carnivore and an animal that cannot digest carbohydrates at all, is ground yellow corn is great for your cat. Corn protein meal, phenomenal for your cat. Whole grain wheat is great for your cat. Rice is great for your cat. Soy flour, animal fats preserved with mixed tocopherols. So animal fats could be any animal and could be any fat. We don't really know whether that's chicken fat or beef fat, it's reindeer fat, it's fairy animal fat. We don't really know which animal it is because they don't tell you. So what they are saying is that you should feed all these ingredients and all these nutritionally sound diets to your dog or cat, and you should completely disregard something that is minimally processed, that is chicken, it's beef, it's organ meat, it's bone, that is a lot better suited to the traits of dogs and cats instead of yellow ground corn and soybean meal and animal fats and chicken byproduct meals. But the decision here is yours, and I am not really going to convince you one way or another if you don't want to be convinced. But in my book, the choice is very simple. The choice is you think on the one hand that ultra-processed foods, ultra-processed kibble or wet food in a bag, in a can, is what your dog should be having day in and day out for days and weeks and months and years on end, and to not deviate from that quote-unquote nutritionally sound diet, or go for better ingredients, go for minimally processed ingredients. If you are in the supermarket yourself and you see something in a pack with a very long shelf life, is that going to be better than the fresh meat and vegetables that you get presented with at the counter, that if you leave out on the top will be going bad after 2 or 3 days? Which one do you think is better? Well, in my book, one is better than the other. Now, yes, ingredients do play a part, a massive part in our diet and our nutrition, and they do play a massive part in your dog or cat's nutrition. So ultimately, it's down to you how you want to feed your dog or cat. Purina does not want you to feed your dog or cat a raw meat diet. But what do you think? I'd be incredibly curious to think whether you are pro or against raw meat for your dog or cat, whether you trust it, whether you handle it correctly, or whether you trust your vet or you trust Purina and you think that yes, kibble is actually their best and their kibble is their best for my dog. And I do not really understand too much about nutrition, or maybe I do understand a lot about nutrition, but I don't mind feeding my dog or cat yellow ground corn and rice and soybean meal. And if you are one of those people, I really do want to hear from you, because That is absolutely fascinating. Talking about raw dog food, if you are interested in the topic, I want to hear the other side, you should really watch this video next.